Creepy weirdo Jared Leto plays a creepy weirdo in Morbius, the third installment in the Venomverse. He's here to suck and obtain the powers of a bat, making him a Batman, if you will. Buy that typo-negative Slurpee from the candy bar and watch the origins of Batman Begins. Hello there, you loose units, and welcome back to another episode of Spicy Boy Reviews. I'm, of course, your host, Andrew Iles. That's right, Sony's released another Spider-Man villain origin story here with Morbius. Directed by Daniel Espinoza, who's known for directing Safe House, Child 44, and what I thought was a pleasantly surprising alien homage in Life. Of course, this is Jared Leto's second attempt at a comic book character adaptation. You might remember him playing Pete Davidson in 2016's Suicide Squad. Here he plays the title character of Morbius, who has a rare blood disease that pretty much makes him cripple, and for some reason has an absolute stiffy for origami. He's famous in this Venomverse for creating a synthetic blood, in case there's like a blood drive shortage. Plot device! However, he wants to stop himself from having an early death, so he tries to combine human DNA with bat DNA for reasons. The movie does explain with some scientific jargon why they're doing that, but honestly,
I suggest you don't worry about this sort of thing and just enjoy yourself. That goes for you all, too.
They do the cliche scientific movie thing with apparently they've been testing on animals for years and years and years until it finally works on a little mousy poo, and of course the natural progression from here on in is a human trial with the inventor himself, which can only go well. That's right, there's a bit of Jekyll and Hyde fuckery going on here. Then Morbius gets bat powers, making him a Batman, I guess. He gets sonar ability, he can now fly with a purple fart gas trailing behind him. He gets the face of a middle-aged Orange County housewife after one too many trips to the plastic surgeon, and the claws of a Kardashian. He's not cured though, no siree, no. Unless he keeps consuming blood, his disease comes back full force. Stakes! Morbius then ends up murdering a whole shipload of mercenaries, but it's okay, it's justified, but because before he does so, they show themselves to be misogynistic douchebags. And that's the thing, everyone who was murdered in this film by vampires shows themselves to be a bit of a douchebag before so murdering is fine. This all, however, gets the attention of Tyrese Gibson and Detective Pablo Escobar, who was hot on Morbius' heels. Morbius also has a pseudo-adopted brother here, played by, Doctor who is the opposite of Morbius and relishes in the power and the murdering. Matt Smith is having an absolute blast here on screen. He's hamming it up, hammier than Miss Piggy at a Sunday pork roast with a side of bacon and ribs. Morbius is obviously the good guy here because he doesn't want to kill people and drink their blood. No. He wants to consume his synthetic blood that he conveniently created.
Oh, I see. Then everything is wrapped up in a neat little package.
Unfortunately, his synthetic blood doesn't suppress his disease for that long, unlike human blood. Flaws? This film, much like the previous two Venom films, feels like it's a movie that was made in the mid-2000s. We get a lot of cliche moments that was very popular in movies in that era, where there's a bunch of douchebags, ready to pummel some unsuspecting victim, but little do they know that unsuspecting victim has secret powers and wipes the floor with said douchebags. Now that trope probably popped up in those movies maybe once, but in this film they do that at least 3 times. Like the previous two Venom films, this film has a look of very dark and dour with a lot of blue hues, oddly enough very much like the 2012 The Amazing Spider-Man movie. Dialogue is pretty stock standard, very cliche here, again, very much out of a superhero film from the mid-2000s. There's a bit of violence in there that pops up, it's a vampire movie, there's got to be some, but it's PG violence, very much like Venom. And very much like Venom, the third act climax is a CGI bukkake party. And the score? You mean the Batman Begins score? That's right, they completely rip off Batman Begins. A couple of little tweaks here and there, but yeah, it's Batman Begins, man. This is more of a monster movie origin story than it is a comic book superhero adaptation. Now, if you've seen the trailer, there's a certain character that pops up from another universe here, but for those of you who need to be warned, spoiler alert! That's right, Michael Keaton's Vulture rocks up because of the tear in the multiverse timeline and stuff like that. The thing is, though, he doesn't go anywhere, he stays. Because obviously Spider-Man and Doctor Strange fixed up the tear and everyone went back to their, their timelines or whatever, but Michael Keaton's Vulture just sticks around for some reason. And when he spawned in this timeline, he ended up in a jail cell, because of course that's where he was in his timeline and stuff like that. But the authorities release him because there's no record of him existing. He doesn't exist in this timeline, so it's just like, off you go, out into the streets. And there is a mid-credit scene where he pops up and has a little bit of a conversation with Morbius, but he rocks up with his world's tech, with the wings, with his helmet and mask, with his, costume identical to his universe. Like, where the fuck did he get that from? Like, if it didn't exist in this timeline, where's it coming from? And of course, he has a little bit of a conversation with Morbius saying, let's go after Spider-Man. And Morbius is like, yeah, cool, that sounds intriguing. Like, does Morbius even know who the fuck Spider-Man is? Is Spider-Man in this universe? I don't know! But if the writers and director don't give a shit, why should I? Oh, Sony. But obviously, they're going to do a Sinister Six film because Sony's had a stiffy for that idea for decades. But when they inevitably make that movie, I hope the Spider-Man who is the hero of the story is the Andrew Garfield one, because that guy is charming as hell and needs another go at the character. But as for this film, Jared Leto was a leading man. Yeah, pretty lackluster. He was honestly quite boring. Matt Smith is obviously having a blast of a time. Oh, and did I mention there was a potential love interest with Dr. Bland? No? Funny that. The best character is obviously the detective here, played by Al Madrigal, who, with his snarky, sarcastic remarks, makes it somewhat entertaining. But yeah, that was my review of Morbius. It was a movie. I think it would have worked better if it was like an indie release, or at least put on streaming service. Why not? But of course, it's Sony. There was a lot of egos at play here. They had to do a big, cinematic release, and I think it's going to fail because of it. Yeah, the film was very meh. Didn't give a shit. I've never been a huge fan of the character of Morbius, growing up watching the cartoon and reading the comic books. I'm not a big fan of the sort of the supernatural element of, superhero comic book stories, like vampires and zombies and stuff like that. Of course, Venom is way more famous, I think, and I was always a fan of his. But Morbius, didn't really care. I don't know if there's any diehard Morbius fans. I mean, maybe there is. If you are, comment. Anyway, guys, that's my review of Morbius. Write down below what other sort of Spider-Man villain you would like to see an origin story of. And of course, if you made it this far into the episode, please give us a thumbs up because your love and support keeps me going, because I just love movies and I assume you do as well. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe icon because we give out episodes weekly, and we'll see you back here next week for the next review, and until then, stay spooky, kids.